أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وله الحمد في الآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث إلى كافة الورى بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته أئمة الهدى ومصابيح الدجى الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: إياك والغضب فأوله جنون وآخره ندم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's great to be with you all here at Baytul Ilm Academy once again, where we have gathered to renew our allegiance to Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, and to learn from the enduring legacy of the Holy Imam. And inshallah, during the course of these 5 lectures that I will present here, I will endeavor to present not only theoretical points from which we can learn, but also some practical tips in order to be able to better follow in the footsteps of our Holy Imam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And as you heard a few moments ago, tonight's lecture is all about Islamic anger management. For indeed, we all get angry from time to time, and it is absolutely essential for us to be able to manage this anger properly in order for us to progress both personally and spiritually. If we are unable to manage our anger in a very effective manner, it is very difficult for us to progress. So what I'd like to do is look at this from the perspective of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and see exactly how we can manage our anger in the best possible way. I'd like to start off by asking 2 fundamental questions, and the response to these 2 questions will form the basis of the rest of tonight's Majlis. The first question is anger always a bad thing? And the second question is, what happens exactly when we feel angry? So with regards to the first question, is anger always a bad thing? Well, the answer to this is actually anger in itself, intrinsically, is neither a virtue nor a vice. It is all to do with how we use it based on the situation that we are placed. So it is neither a good thing nor a bad thing. In fact, it is a faculty given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is known in Arabic as quwwa ghadabiyya, the faculty of anger. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never create anything without wisdom behind that, without a purpose. So this faculty, this quwwa has been placed within all of us for a good reason. So with this faculty, we are able to repel what is harmful for us. With this faculty, we are able to defend the truth, to combat evil. We are able to stand up for those things which are important for us. Our family, our principles, our beliefs. We are able to defend ourselves and our property. This is something placed within us. However, when we look at this, we see that there is a right way of dealing with it and there's a wrong way. This is what we'll look at inshallah later on tonight. Not only that though, with regards to the second question, that also will form a very significant part of this lecture, and that is what happens to us when we feel angry. Well, when we feel angry, the experts in the medical profession tell us a number of important changes happen in our body. They say that anger triggers what is known as the flight or fight response in our body. This means that when we get angry, we have two natural tendencies to act. One is known as the fight response, the other is known as the flight response. The fight response means that we stand our ground and we combat that perceived threat, that perceived harm, that perceived danger, whatever it might be. We take a stance and we want to somehow combat and respond to it, and we just stay and we take a stance against it. As for the flight mode, that means that when we are perceived with this threat, when we are faced with this threat or challenge, whatever it might be, we no longer stand our ground, but rather we turn and we take flight, meaning we flee away from the situation. So, these are the two most natural tendencies that our body goes through whenever it is stimulated by anger. Now, we will see, is there a third response or not, and what is the Islamic position with regards to this? But let me continue and just describe what these experts in the medical profession say, what happens to our bodies when we feel angry. It is quite amazing when we look at it like this, because we need to be able to recognize the signs of anger very correctly. If we know what's happening to us, we are able to spot it very quickly, and therefore we are able to deal with the situation in a much more effective way. So, the doctors, they tell us that when we get angry, first of all, adrenaline pumps through the body. Also, blood flows towards our muscles in preparation for physical exertion. Also, what happens is that the heart rate begins to beat faster. Our respiration increases, and our body temperature rises as well. So our skin begins to perspire. What's more is that not only physically but also mentally, there's a change happening in our bodies when we feel angry. Our mind becomes sharpened and it becomes more focused. All of our energy begins to be directed in a particular direction. In fact, we can summarize and say, when we feel angry, we are actually twice or 3 times or even more times powerful than when we are calm. When we are angry, we are much more powerful. You think about it. Perhaps the last time you were angry, how much more powerful, how much more you could do as compared to when you were calm. However, now, when we look at the Islamic perspective, we realize, therefore, that something has to come in here for the guidance of this extra power. With extra power comes extra responsibility to be able to manage this anger in the right way, to be able to use it in the right way. Otherwise, like I said earlier, it is very difficult for us to progress either as individuals, personally, or spiritually, and move closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So tonight, inshallah, I would like to look at this. But as a just brief indication for this particular part of this majlis, for this introduction, I would like to say that actually there's never ever one correct response with regards to any given situation. We cannot say that always we should take the flight option and flee. Nor can we say that we should always take the fight option and fight and stand our ground and combat. However, there is also one other response. And we will see that actually even this response is not a one fix for all situations either. We actually have 3 total responses. Those 2 were the most natural tendencies of our body to either fight or flight. There is a third option, and that is known as Qazmul Ghayz. Qazmul Ghayz in Arabic is a phrase that is used to refer to the refraining of anger. Ghayz is actually rage. It's a higher form than just normal anger. So, altogether, we have two most natural tendencies that the body adopts whenever it feels angry: fight or flight. But there's also this third option, which is controlling, restraining and pacifying our anger. Inshallah, we will see. Why do we need to sometimes take one option over another option? There is no one fixed solution for all situations. So now we need guidance. We need guidance from the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When should we choose one option over another? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's have a look at what the Quran says, in particular with regards to the fight response. Do we have an example in the Quran where somebody is described as taking the fight option, not flight or restraint? Indeed we do. This example is not of any ordinary person. Indeed, it is of a prophet. But no, not just of an ordinary prophet, an Ulul Azam prophet. One of the 5 great prophets who came with new legislation. These 5 are Nabi Nuh, Nabi Ibrahim, Nabi Musa, Nabi Isa, and Rasulul Akram Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This particular example concerns Nabi Musa ala nabina wa alihi wa alayhi salam. It's referred to in Surah A'raf, verse number 150. Look what happens. First of all, let me put the verse in context. This great prophet, Nabi Musa, an Ulul Adam prophet, he came with new legislation. He has this 40-day and night meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the mountain of Tur. At the end of this meeting, he is given the tablets of Torah. In that meeting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that your people, since you have left them, have undertaken to worship this calf that they have made. So now Nabi Musa, when he hears this news that Allah has told him that the people have started to engage in shirk and polytheism, he returns to his people, but he's angry. Look what the verse tells us. Very clearly, the verse explains that he was definitely angry and grieved. وَلَمَّا رَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَى قَوْمِ غَضْبَانًا أَسِفًا. When Musa returned to his people, while he was angry, ghadaban, ghadab, he was definitely angry and he was definitely asif, meaning he was grieved because of what Allah had told him about his people. So now look at his response. Does he take flight? Does he flee? Does he restrain his anger? He doesn't. He fights. This is why I said earlier that there is no one solution for all situations. We have this God-given faculty. It's up to us to be able to use it in the right place, at the right time, at the right level. Look what Nabi Musa does. He is so angry, he actually does 3 things. First of all, he tells the people off. He rebukes them. قَالَ بِئْسَ مَا خَلَفْتُمُونِ مِنْ بَعْدِي. He says to them that evil has been your conduct in my absence. Meaning, I went away for a short period of time and look what you have done. You have made this calf out of gold and you have begun to worship this calf. How evil has been your conduct. Then what is he saying? أَعَجِلْتُمْ أَمْرَ رَبِّكُمْ. Would you hasten in the edict of your Lord? So, the first thing he does, he's rebuking them. He's telling them off. He's taking up a fight. Not just that though. Even further, those tablets of Torah that he was given, he actually throws them down. وَأَلْقَى الْأَرْوَاحِ. He throws the tablets down. That's 2. Thirdly, look what this great prophet of Allah does. وَأَخَذَ بِرَأْسِ أَخِي يَجُرُّهُ إِلَيْهِ. He takes the hair of his brother Harun, who is also a prophet. He takes his hair and he pulls Harun towards him. Now, my brothers and sisters, how can we explain this behavior? Not just from an ordinary pious person, not just from a prophet, but an Ulul Azam prophet. 40 days and nights he's just had a meeting with Allah. He's just been given Torah. He tells his people off. He throws down Torah. and he grabs the hair of his brother Harun and he pulls Harun by his hair towards him. What is the response? When we are talking about Islamic anger management, we need to look at this and look at ourselves as well. When can we use anger? When shouldn't we use anger? To what extent should we use it? When should we restrain it? Look at how we can explain this. First of all, the people had not just engaged in a small sin. They had engaged in the biggest sin of all, shirk. In Surah Luqman, verse number 13, we are told, Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Indeed, shirk and polytheism is a great injustice. Now, in this situation, the Bani Israel were at a very critical point in their whole history. They could have gone either way. They were going towards shirk and the worship of this calf that they had made. What exactly was Nabi Musa's response therefore? Nabi Musa's response was nothing else but the manifestation of Allah's anger upon the people. His response was nothing less than a manifestation of Allah's ghadab upon the people. Because they had engaged in this great sin, the greatest sin of all, shirk, he needed to respond in a way that he would be able to turn them 180 degrees round. At the moment they're worshipping an idol that they have created themselves. The worship of Tawheed is beginning to be forgotten and put aside. He had to express a type of reaction that would turn them 180 degrees round. Therefore, his response was not only appropriate, it was the best possible response in that situation. Using the faculty of anger in order to stir such emotion within the people that it would make them think, what have we done? What is the situation that we are in? It had to be a response that caused them to think about what they have done and to change their ways completely. It was a very critical moment in their history. Now, when we look at it like this, we see therefore, if Nabi Musa had have had a sort of like a passive response, if he had a subdued response, a calmer response, he would not have had that effect. He would not have been able to change them and save them. Perhaps they would have thought that, oh, this great prophet, he doesn't really mind if we worship this calf. Look at his response. It's calm, it's subdued. Or at the very least, they might have thought that this great prophet, he's indifferent to what we have done. You see? So here we see a great example of ghadab used in this perfect sense, a very divine sense. Now, inshallah, we'll see what do we mean by divine anger versus non-divine anger. What other examples can we give from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to explain this in more detail. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So now, when we want to look at this, we have to get some guidance. Okay, when does anger become divine? When does it become non-divine? For this, over the years, I put together 3 telltale signs, 3 characteristics of what we call divine anger versus non-divine anger. How we can recognize if it's this type or that type. The first telltale sign is that non-divine anger controls us. It controls the intellect. Whereas divine anger, we are in control of it. The intellect controls the anger. Now let me give you some examples of this. You will recall in the Battle of Khandaq, one of the greatest examples we have of a controlling act where the person is totally in charge of his faculty of anger. His intellect is in charge. That is none other than Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. So what happened here? You will recall that his opponent was none other than Amr ibn Abdul, the so-called Farisu Yalyal. Farisu Yalyal means that horseman warrior of Yalyal. Because Amr ibn Abdul, just before Khandaq, he had this battle where he single-handedly defeated the enemy soldiers in a place called Yalyal. So he came to Khandaq with this great reputation, Farisu Yalyal, the horseman warrior of this place called Yalyal. So now he comes and he wants to fight the Muslims. Amirul Mu'mineen comes out to fight him. He defeats him. But then Amr ibn Abdul Wud, he spits on the face of Mawla Amir. At that point, Imam Ali gets up. He goes for a walk. Then he comes back and then he finishes him off. So now, when he goes back to his camp, the people ask him, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, we saw that you had defeated him. You were sitting on his chest. You were about to finish him. But then we saw you get up and go for a walk. You came back and then you finished him off. What was all that about?" Look at the response. He says that when I was about to kill him, he spat on my face. At that point, I felt angry. But I did not want to kill him when I was in that angry state. I wanted to kill him sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And so I got up, I went for a walk, and I made sure, I'm paraphrasing now, I made sure that I was in control of my anger. You see, this is an instance of the intellect controlling the faculty of anger, not the other way around. So now, when we look at this, this is the first telltale sign that the faculty of our aql, the intellect, is in control of the anger, not the faculty of anger is in control of the intellect. In fact, the statement I read out at the beginning of this majlis is also from the same Imam. He says it so beautifully. Iyaka wal ghadab. Beware of anger. Meaning, now we know, it must mean beware of your non-divine anger. The wrong type of anger. Iyaka wal ghadab. Beware of your non-divine anger. فَأَوَّلُهُ جُنُونَ. For its beginning is madness, is junoon. وَآخِرُهُ nadam. Its ending is regret. Think about it. The last time you got angry, and it was this non-divine type of anger. It was something worldly. It was something egotistical. Somebody said something to you. It hurt your ego. So you responded in an angry way. Wasn't the beginning of it madness? Wasn't the end of it nothing but regret? It's one of those statements that is absolutely a gem. That the beginning of non-divine anger is always going to be madness. Our judgment is going to be impaired. We are not going to be able to make the right call. When we are angry, it's always going to be a state of madness. The end will always be regret. In fact, we have a tradition from Rasul Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam where the Prophet himself says that in fact, whenever somebody is angry and they have to make a judgment, the person should never make a judgment when they are angry. Because it's always going to be incorrect. It's going to be impaired. Never, he says, make a judgment when you are angry. So now, that's the first telltale sign that always the intellect has to be in control. We have to be in control of it, not that it is in control of us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As for the second telltale sign and characteristic of divine anger versus non-divine anger, this goes back to the motive. What is our motive for getting angry? Why were we angry? Was it because somebody hurt our feelings and so our ego was hurt and therefore we want to get them back somehow? Was it for something worldly? Was it because we are being somehow tyrannical, oppressive and cruel? If it's like that, definitely it's non-divine anger. However, if it's for a worldly reason, if it's for a non-worldly reason, meaning otherworldly reason, something to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wishes and His will, something to do with defending the truth, combating evil, defending ourselves and our property and our beliefs and our values and our family, then it will be divine anger. That's the second telltale sign. And thirdly, the third characteristic of divine anger is that it will never go beyond the remits and the boundaries of the religion. You think about it. When you have non-divine anger, all sorts of things begin to happen. People start acting in a way that their actions are beyond the boundaries of the Sharia. Sometimes they say things, they do things, they get violent sometimes. This is totally a sign that is non-divine anger. Let me illustrate all three of these signs by use of this anecdote. See if you can spot all three signs here. So there was this father, and his pride and joy was his car. Now, I don't know what it is about men and their cars, but his pride and joy was this car of his. He was fixing it one day, and he hears a scratching noise. He sees that his son, who's about 6 years of age, is actually scratching the side of the car with a stone. Now this man, this father, immediately, without even thinking, he takes the hand of his son and he hits it. However, he forgets that he's still holding a wrench in his hand. When he hits his son's hand, he breaks all his fingers. He crushes them. So now, he takes him to the hospital. This son of his is in hospital. He gets all his hand bandaged. But then in hospital, this son of his, he holds his hand up and says, "Daddy, when will my fingers grow back?" Because all of his fingers have been broken. This breaks the heart of the father when he sees his son saying, "Daddy, when will my fingers grow back?" But you know what? Even worse than that is when they go home. When they go home, the father is carrying his son with him. His hand has all been bandaged. And he says to himself, "Let me just have a look at the damage that was caused. Was it something significant or not?" He has a look. You know what he sees? His son had actually scratched the words, "I love you, Daddy." Now, isn't this exactly what Amir al-Mu'mineen tells us? That the beginning is madness. Without even thinking, he smashes his fingers. The end is always regret. We see all three signs here. That first of all, his intellect was being controlled by his anger. Secondly, the motive was not a divine motive. It was a worldly motive. Thirdly, these actions were beyond the boundaries of the Sharia. We cannot hit children like that. You see, all three telltale signs are in this anecdote. And just imagine now, when Amir al-Mu'mineen says the beginning of anger, non-divine anger, is madness, and the end is regret. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. Okay, so now let's have a look at how we can now try and pacify this non-divine anger. When we are feeling this anger and it is of the non-divine type, we can actually do 4 things in order to appease it, in order to pacify it and control it. This is where the Qazmul Ghayz comes in that I referred to earlier. The controlling and restraining of our non-divine anger. For this, I would like to put forward a very simple mnemonic, an ABCD mnemonic that will help us to remember these 4 strategies for controlling non-divine anger. First of all, the A. The A stands for acknowledgement. What do we acknowledge? We must first of all acknowledge that it is non-divine. How do we know it's non-divine? By seeing, are those 3 telltale signs there or not? If they are there, definitely it is non-divine anger. We know therefore our judgment will be impaired. Our judgment will be incorrect. So that's the A. Acknowledging the fact it is non-divine by looking at those telltale signs. If they are there, we know it's non-divine. Secondly, the B. What does the B stand for? The B stands for bearing in mind Allah. We are told that when we want to control this non-divine anger, do zikrullah. Remember Allah. Bear Allah in mind. We have this great tradition from Imam Jafar Sadiq salawatullah wasalam alayhi, where the Imam, he tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to one of his prophets. He says to one of his prophets that, "O son of Adam, remember me in the midst of your anger, and I will remember you in the midst of my wrath." Then he says, "I will not obliterate you when I obliterate others. And he says to him that, take me and regard me as being a sufficient avenger for you. Allah is saying, take me and regard me as being a sufficient avenger for you. For indeed, my revenge on your behalf is better than your revenge for yourself. This tells us that sometimes, you know that we have that statement, choose your battles carefully. It also applies here. We don't always have to fight every single battle that we are faced with. Leave some things for Allah to just sort out. Have tawakkul in Allah. Allah is saying that I am a better avenger for you than you are for yourself. Also, for the B, there's some other things we can do to remember Allah. One thing is sajda. We are told in the traditions, when you are feeling this non-divine anger, go into sajda. Of course, some of these things will be possible in some places, in some situations. They won't be possible in others. We won't be able to do that in the street, of course. But say you're at home, you receive an email, you receive a text, it drives you crazy. Instead of immediately responding to it, take a time out, go into sajda, reflect over the situation, because the beginning of it will be madness, the end will be regret if you respond immediately without thinking. Go into sajda. This will help you to remember Allah. This will help you to appease this non-divine anger. Another thing, we are told, hawqala. Hawqala is the name given to that phrase, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. This is known as hawqala. There is no strength or power except that of Allah. So, when we are bearing Allah in mind, let's do these things. First of all, tawakkul to Allah. Let Him take revenge for us. We don't have to fight and win every single battle. Go into sajda. Do hawqala. Just recite La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We can add al-ali al-azim as well. These are all strategies to bear Allah in mind. Another one is ista'adha. Ista'adha means seeking refuge in Allah. This is a brilliant strategy for remembering Allah all the time, especially when we are faced with non-divine anger. Ista'adha, what does it mean? Ista'adha, normally people say, well, it's all to do with saying, A'udhu billah minash shaitani rajim, A'udhu billah, A'udhu billah. I seek refuge in Allah from the outcast shaitan. Well, that's part of it, but that's not true ista'adha. Ista'adha is when somebody, in their mind and in their action, they truly seek refuge in Allah by rejecting shaitan. Let me illustrate this by this example. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ista'adha. Now, you've probably heard of this great alim, Sheikh Murtaza Al-Ansari. He's known as Khatimul Fuqaha wal Mujtahideen, the seal of the jurists and the mujtahids. He has these great works that are still taught and studied in the Hawza today. Works such as Al-Makasib in Fiqh, Al-Rasail in Usul. This great scholar, Sheikh Murtaza Ansari, look what happens to him, and we'll see how this ista'adha takes place. So, this is narrated in different ways, by the way, but this is one of the versions. You might have heard it in different versions. So one day, one of his students is having a dream, and he sees in his dream shaitan. In this dream, shaitan has in front of him all of these ropes. These ropes are of different sizes, some are thinner, some are thicker, and he sees one very thick rope which is cut. So this student of Sheikh Murtaza Ansari says to shaitan in his dream, that what is that big thick rope I see, and what are all these other ropes? Shaitan responds, he says, I use different types of ropes for different people. The more faith they have, the rope that is cut. I see there's a very thick one which is cut. Shaitan says to him, last night I wanted to throw this very thick rope over Sheikh Murtaza Al-Ansari. What happened though? It got cut in 3 parts. So this person, he wakes up, he goes to Sheikh Al-Ansari and he tells him his dream. This is what shaitan said in my dream. What's the interpretation of it? Look what Sheikh Ansari tells him. He says that last night my wife was giving birth. and I needed money for this childbirth. However, the only money I had was some amana, some money that had been entrusted to me to look after. On 3 separate occasions, because I needed that money for this childbirth, I went towards this amana. The first time, I said, A'udhu billah minash shaitani rajim. I did ista'adha, but not just saying it. He said that, I came back. You see, this is ista'adha. Really acting upon it. Not just saying, A'udhu billah, but acting upon it, bearing Allah in mind, seeking refuge in Allah and shunning shaitan, rejecting shaitan. Second time, he says, I went towards that amana, A'udhu billah, I did ista'adha, I came back. Third time, same thing, and I came back. As it happens, my wife gave birth and everything was fine. So now this person, actually there's a humorous end to this story. This person, he asks shaitan in this dream, perhaps it's a question that we all have as well, that shaitan, how about me? What type of rope do you have for me? He perhaps is thinking that shaitan will say, you know, I've got this really thick rope for you and all of that. You know what shaitan says to him? He says, you know, for you I don't even need a rope. Meaning you're already in my hands. Right? But of course, this story, it's a dream, it's not authoritative for us. It's not an ayah of the Quran, it's not an authentic hadith, but the point is valid. The point being, true ista'adha is when we really seek refuge in Allah by doing something that shuns shaitan, that rejects shaitan. So next time we say, A'udhu billah minash shaitani rajim, we should realize it should not just be something said. It should be an action. It should be a thought process. This is how we will do true ista'adha and bear Allah in mind. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that was the B. Bearing Allah in mind by doing these things. Sajda, hawqala, and true ista'adha. The C. When we want to pacify and appease our non-divine anger, the C stands for change in position. Again, all of this is from the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and from the Quran. What does that mean? We are told that change your position. When you've seen those telltale signs, you know it's non-divine anger, change your position. If you are sitting, stand up. Sometimes in another tradition we are told, if you are sitting, lie down. There are 2 traditions here. One says stand up, one says lie down. But the point being, change your position. Don't just stay in that same position. And if you are standing, sit down. We are told that leave that place. Take a time out. Come back later on. Some of you might have come across anger management courses at work. In the non-Islamic environment, there are lots of these courses as well. They say similar things. They say exercise is a very effective means to control anger. It's a very important strategy for anger management. Again, it's all about changing position. We are also told something quite remarkable. Now, Allahu A'lam, where the wisdom behind this is, but we are told, if there are no mahramiyya issues, meaning there's no shar'i, there's no legal problem in touching the other person who's made you angry, then touch that person. Maybe put your hand on his shoulder, whatever the case might be. You have to judge the situation. Sometimes the person might get more angry. But if there's no mahramiyya issue, meaning you're mahram, you're allowed to touch them legally, and they will not get more angry, we are told, touch that person. Something happens. Sometimes we know the philosophy and the wisdom behind these things. Sometimes we don't. That's another issue. That's another strategy we can use. Also with regards to changing position, you know, a lot of the time we simply misunderstand the situation. We simply misinterpret the situation. We think, oh, he said this to me, and we assume he meant that. But who knows what he really meant? Let's analyze the situation properly. Take a time out. Go in a different place. Think about all the possible angles about the situation. Maybe he thought that. Maybe he meant that. Have husn zan. Husn zan is when we have a good, positive opinion about a fellow mu'min. Don't have su' zan. Su' zan is a bad, negative opinion. Assume the best. Say, inshallah, he didn't mean that, he meant this. Make up excuses for that person. When it's a fellow mu'mineen, we are told, make up excuses for that fellow believer of yours. Rather than having a bad impression, make something up that convinces you, inshallah, it was something good that he meant. Often we misunderstand, we misinterpret the situation, we get angry. Afterwards, we realize actually he meant something totally different. Analyze all the angles, consult people, discuss the situation, and then thrash it out thoroughly. And often we will see that actually our understanding was totally misplaced. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And finally, the D. When we want to appease and restrain and pacify non-divine anger, the D stands for drenching with water. What this means is, it's almost as if we drench the fire of anger with water. So we are told, when you are having this non-divine anger, perform wudu. Go and perform wudu. In another tradition we are told, as well as wudu, also perform ghusl. Like I said, sometimes these things won't be possible. If it's happening right there and then, you won't be able to do these things. But if it's possible, you're at home, you hear something, you read something, it's got you really mad. Instead of responding immediately, do these things and inshallah, we'll be able to control our anger, and inshallah, we'll be able to progress spiritually and personally. As a summary, before we mention a few words of Masa'ib, we looked at Islamic anger management, and we saw that with regards to those two fundamental questions, first of all, there is no such thing as anger always being a virtue or anger always being a vice. It's neither a virtue nor a vice intrinsically and in itself. It all depends on the situation and how we use it. Our body goes through lots of changes, both physically and mentally, when we get angry. We need to recognize these changes in order to deal with anger in a much better way. We saw the example of Nabi Musa, where he takes this fight to the people, not flight, which is running away. Sometimes that is important. Sometimes fighting and using the God-given faculty of anger in the right way is important. Nabi Musa fought the people and he changed the situation around. Other times we should do Qazmul Ghayz, which is restraining and controlling our anger. So then we said to ourselves, how do we recognize? How can we differentiate between one type and another? How can we choose which option to utilize in any situation? We said there were three telltale signs and characteristics of divine anger. Always the intellect will be in control of it, not the other way around. Secondly, the motive will be divine. It won't be worldly or egotistical or tyrannical. And the third telltale sign is that divine anger is always, our actions are always within the Sharia. If our actions start going beyond the Sharia, know that it is non-divine anger. When it is non-divine anger, we then said there are these four ways from the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt as to how we can appease it. We can appease it by using this simple mnemonic, which helps us to memorize it in an easy way. The A stands for acknowledging the fact it is non-divine by looking at those signs. B stands for bearing Allah in mind, doing those things, hawqala, sajda and true isti'adha. C is changing our position. D is drenching with water by performing wudu, and other traditions say also perform ghusl as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibna Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifna'ik. Alayka minni salamullahi abada. ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Although physically we are here in Chicago, let's go to Karbala with our hearts tonight. Let's recall how two members of Imam Hussein's family found the sacred body of Abu Abdullah after the tragic events of Ashura. The first family member that we will look at tonight as to how she found the sacred body of Imam Hussein is none other than his beloved daughter Sakina. How does Sakina find the body of her father after the events of Ashura? The same Sakina who wouldn't like to leave her father at all. The same Sakina who would love to sleep on the chest of her father on the day of Ashura after everything had been done. Now she comes to the body of her father. But Mu'mineen, how does she find the body of Abu Abdullah? She finds it without a head. She finds it covered in arrows. She finds it covered in wounds from the swords and from the spears. It is reported that Sakina bint al-Hussein now hugs the body of her father. As she does so, she loses consciousness. And then she reports that she heard her father say these famous lines. And she says that I heard my father say, Shi'ati, oh Shi'ati, oh my Shia, Ma in sharibtum rayya azbin fadkuruni. Oh my Shia, whenever you drink sweet water that quenches your thirst, so remember me. Oh samitum bi gharibin, oh shahidin fandubuni. Or when you hear of a stranger or of a martyr, then mourn me. But Mu'mineen, let's now look at the second member of Abu Abdullah's family who found the sacred body of Imam Hussein after Ashura. That person is none other than Holy Lady Zainab al-Kubra. On the 11th of Muharram, how does the Holy Lady Zainab find the body of Abu Abdullah? It is reported that Umar ibn Sa'd had given the instruction that go and collect all the fallen from my army. Go and give them ghusl. Go and bury them. And then Umar ibn Sa'd performed the prayer over them. But I ask you, Mu'mineen, what about the bodies of the Shuhada? What happened to them? There was nobody to give them ghusl. There was nobody to cover them with shrouds. There was nobody to bury them. They were left unburied, exposed to the wind and the sands of Karbala. On the 11th of Muharram, Umar ibn Sa'd, he decides to go to Kufa with the women and the children. As he's going, they are tied with the chains. They are slapped. They are hit. They are sworn at. The women, they all cry. They say, by Allah, take us to the Qatlgah. Take us to the place where Hussein was killed. We want to see it one last time. So they are taken to the place where Abu Abdullah is lying on the plains of Karbala. But what do they see when they come to the body? They see such a sight that they all start crying. They all start beating their faces in anguish. The narrator says, I will never forget the words of Zainab, how she mourned her brother when she came across his body. The narrator says she mourned him in such a way that friends and foes alike, they all wept. He says that first of all, she called out to her grandfather. She says, Ya Muhammad, Salla alayka malaikatu sama. Oh Prophet, may the angels of the heavens send their salutations on you. Then the Holy Lady Zainab, she describes what she's seeing. These are not just words of mourning, Mu'mineen. She is also giving us a very graphic description of what they did to Abu Abdullah. This is Hussein lying there, body. Murammalun bid-dima. He's covered in blood. Muqatta'ul adha. His limbs have been severed. Now Lady Zainab, she describes what is happening to her and the children. She says, "O Prophet, وَبَنَاتُكَ sabaya." Your daughters have been taken captive. But now, mu'mineen, Lady Zainab al-Kubra has one prayer remaining, and that is that this sacrifice of hers becomes accepted by Allah. She places her hands under the sacred body of our Abdullah. She lifts it and she prays to Allah, Ilahi, taqabbal minna hadha al-qurban. Oh my Lord, accept from us this sacrifice. Allah la'natullah al-qawmi zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Oh Allah, by the intercession of Imam Hussein, by the intercession of all the shuhada and usara of Karbala, accept the following prayers. Oh Allah, enable us to manage our anger in a way that we will earn your pleasure and not incur your anger, inshallah. Oh Allah, bless this center, bless all those who frequent it, inshallah. Oh Allah, forgive us and our forefathers for our sins. Oh Allah, bring relief to all those who are facing difficulty around the world. And oh Allah, our last but not least prayer is you hasten the appearance of the 12th Holy Imam. Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraju sharif. Wassalamu alaikum.